If Jacob collapses because of his undercover mission, could Naomi ever forgive Bill, whether he is the culprit or merely the man who stayed silent? This is exactly the kind of twist that could push beyond the gates to a new level of tension, where no one is truly innocent anymore, no trust remains unbroken, and every relationship can become a silent battlefield. What makes this story so dangerous is not simply that Naomi uncovers disturbing signs connected to Bill and Joey, but that those signs appear in a way that feels too perfectly timed to complete. Too much like a confession carefully arranged to fall into the exact hands that were meant to see it. Naomi is not the kind of woman who panics over scattered fragments. She is intelligent enough to understand that in a network like the plasma ring, the truth rarely shows itself in its real face. But precisely because of that, when details that once seemed unrelated begin fitting together with a cold and terrifying precision, she can no longer calm herself by calling it a misunderstanding. A financial file moved from its original place without ever being deleted. A secret meeting schedule appearing and vanishing from synth data. An intermediary name once linked to illegal plasma transport now indirectly tied to a shell company Bill quietly protected. And worse than all of that, Joey knowing upheavals before they happened. As if he had never been chasing the storm at all but had always stood at its center. Naomi falls silent not because she has found the answer, but because for the first time she realizes that the question she fears most may be the right one. If both Bill and Joey are involved, then which one of them truly controls the game? Or are they both simply keeping a filthy machine alive in the shadows together? What sends Naomi spiraling inward is the fact that these two men are not merely names in a criminal case. One is her father, the foundation of power that shaped the way she has viewed the world since childhood. The man who taught her to believe that strength lies in controlling a crisis before it has the chance to devour you. The other is a man who has always lived in the corners of Fairmont Crest, always half hidden inside danger. Always seeming to know too much while revealing only what benefits him most at any given moment. Naomi never trusted Joey, but she understood the way he operated. That is more terrifying than hatred, because when a man like Joey suddenly tries to stop Jacob from entering an undercover mission, the first reaction is not gratitude but suspicion. Joey has never been the type to protect anyone unconditionally. If he is trying to stop Jacob, then either he knows Jacob will die, or he knows Jacob will live long enough to reach a secret that must never come to light. The more Naomi thinks about it, the more chilled she becomes, because both possibilities are equally horrifying. If Joey truly fears Jacob will be eliminated, then it means the plasma ring has spread so deeply that even those closest to it can no longer control its violence. But if Joey is only protecting himself, then every sign of concern is nothing more than a thin layer of humanity draped over a man who survives by burying others to keep himself alive. Bill wounds Naomi in another way, quieter and crueler. Joey, at least, was always a recognized threat, while Bill has long stood in that gray moral zone where he is hard enough to make others fear him, yet clever enough to preserve the image of a father. A protector, a pillar too strong to shake. The problem is that the most dangerous people do not always scream their power. Often, they are the ones who know exactly when to stay silent. And it is Bill's silence, while Jacob walks deeper into the darkness, that begins to suffocate Naomi with suspicion. If Bill knew Jacob was undercover and still did nothing, was he trusting Jacob to survive? Or had he already accepted sacrificing him in exchange for something greater? Naomi cannot stop thinking about how strangely calm Bill always seemed whenever the name Plasma Ring surfaced. Too calm, too composed, too much like a man who does not fear being mentioned because he has already prepared an escape route from every corner that might lead back to him. Betrayal does not come to Naomi like a sharp knife. It comes like cold water seeping slowly into her bones, numbing her faith little by little. She begins revisiting old details with new eyes, the moments Bill redirected conversations whenever the subject of the stabber came up. The times he deliberately pushed the family's focus toward a visible monster, too convenient, too easy to hate. as though he understood that people only need one devil with a clear face in order to stop digging into the deeper darkness. From that point on, the story of the stabber is no longer an isolated clue, but a deliberate smokescreen. Naomi begins asking herself who benefits most when every eye is fixed on a name frightening enough to consume the community's fear. Among the forces circling the plasma ring, only the truly powerful would dare create a surface monster to hide the more complex architecture of power behind it. A lone killer is always easier to sell to the public than a filthy system backed by money, hospitals, shell corporations, lawyers, politics, and polished faces whose hands are stained by something too dark to ever wash clean. Naomi begins to see that revolting picture emerge piece by piece. The plasma ring may never have been just a smuggling network. It may be the shell covering a far greater secret, where transporting plasma is only the visible branch, while the real commodity is control over human lives, silence, forced loyalty, and even lives that can be erased the moment they become a threat. The more she thinks, the more Naomi realizes that Jacob did not simply walk into an investigation. He walked into the core of a machine protected by people with intensely personal reasons for making sure the truth never survives. Jacob stands at the center of this conflict whether he realizes it or not. He enters the undercover mission believing he can separate love from justice, believing he can keep Naomi out of danger by refusing to tell her how filthy the plasma ring truly is, believing he can turn himself into the one who bears every risk so that the woman he loves will never have to carry the most merciless part of it. But an undercover mission is never just work. It is a process that erodes humanity, where every day of survival demands the sacrifice of another piece of morality. The deeper Jacob goes, the more lies he has to tell, the more he must behave like someone Naomi would despise if she ever knew the whole truth. That is the real tragedy. To protect the woman he loves, he must become suspicious in her eyes. And at that exact moment, Joey appears like a warning signal full of contradiction. He does not openly threaten Jacob. He chooses something even more poisonous, offering resistance that sounds reasonable, warnings half true and half false. Bits of information carefully dripped out just enough for Jacob to understand that Joey knows the mission is more dangerous than Jacob's superiors have admitted. Jacob can sense the real tension in Joey, but he is not naive enough to mistake it for kindness. The truth may lie in the most terrifying place between those extremes. Joey wants Jacob alive, but he cannot allow Jacob to know everything. That is the kind of contradiction found only in a man who has sunk so deeply into darkness that only a fragment of humanity remains. Just enough to fear what it would mean if an innocent life were crushed in front of him. Naomi stands between those opposing poles and slowly begins to feel like the only person forbidden from knowing the full truth, even though she is the one who will pay the highest price when it all explodes. She watches Jacob drift further from her with the stubbornness of a man who believes silence is protection. She watches Bill continue to exist inside a calmness that makes her blood run cold. She watches Joey hover around the blind spots of the case like a shadow that can appear anywhere whenever things are about to spiral beyond control. The feeling of being surrounded begins to transform Naomi from someone trying to hold her family together into someone willing to tear away the final covering with her own hands. It is during this phase that she stumbles upon the thing that makes turning back impossible. A chain of restored data from an old device showing that Bill and Joey had once been present on the same journey, encoded under the name of a medical relief fund. At the exact time a plasma shipment disappeared from the official monitoring system. That alone is not enough to convict anyone, but the true problem is that both men tried to erase that period as though it had never existed. No one deletes something harmless with that level of care. Naomi understands that too well. From that moment on, her fear is no longer abstract. It has a face, it has names, it has blood ties. It sits in the very rooms once called family. Bill, for his part, is no longer merely a man observing the storm from a distance. If he is truly innocent, then he is the kind of innocent man who concealed things so badly that his own daughter now believes he could be a monster. But if he is involved, even unwillingly, then his motives are probably more complicated than money. Men like Bill crave control more than they crave profit. In that case, the plasma ring is not only an illegal network but a tool for maintaining balance between rival factions, for indebting other people, for holding the weaknesses of families that once seemed untouchable, for making everyone pass through his door if they want to survive. Maybe Bill entered it at first only as a man cleaning up someone else's consequences, a link invited in to legalize things that could never be brought into the light. But systems like that always devour those arrogant enough to believe they can use them and walk away. If Bill stepped inside, then he is likely bound by too many secrets, too many filthy agreements, too many lives that would fall if he ever opened his mouth. That is why some dangerous men are not terrifying, because they were evil from the beginning, but because they have gone too far to ever return to being ordinary men. Naomi understands that, and that understanding hurts her even more than hatred ever could. Because even if Bill is a victim of his own ambition, he is still the man who allowed his entire family to drift toward the edge of the abyss just to keep his empire from collapsing. Joey is a different kind of monster, more instinctive, more adaptable, more built for survival. If Bill is the stone wall hiding its cracks with power, Joey is the knife hidden up a sleeve, always ready to cut loose any link so that he will not sink with it. He knows too much, and that knowledge makes him the most immediate threat of all. A man like Joey does not need to sit on a throne to wield power. He only needs to hold the secrets of those who do. That is why the possibility that he is the operational force behind the plasma ring has become more terrifying than ever. Maybe he is not the supreme mastermind, but he is the man who knows where the bodies are, where the money went, who received what, who needs to disappear, who signed which document in the middle of the night and then denied it the next morning with all the dignity they could perform. The keeper of hidden truths has never been weak. And if Joey is beginning to lose control over how far Jacob has gone, Naomi has every reason to believe Jacob has touched something that no longer belongs to the ordinary realm of threats and intimidation. Perhaps Jacob is not only tracing the plasma ring, but the real structure of power behind it. Perhaps that is why Joey is afraid. Not because Jacob will die immediately, but because if Jacob lives and drags the truth back into the light, countless masks will fall at once, pulling down more people than anyone ever imagined. From here, Naomi's tragedy becomes more brutal than any investigation. She is no longer allowed to be only a daughter or only a wife. She is forced to decide who she is when those identities collide. If Jacob disappears, she will have to live with the question of who allowed it to happen. Joey, the man who always knew the tracks before anyone else but only ever spoke in fragments. Bill, the man who may have known all along and still did not stop it. Or Naomi herself, because she realized too late that the people she trusted most may never have stood fully on her side. In the world of Beyond the Gates, the deepest pain does not come from betrayal by enemies, but from the moment you realize the people who love you may still be willing to destroy you to keep their secrets intact. Naomi begins to change from within. Pain makes her colder, sharper, less innocent. She no longer wants to be protected by hollow reassurances. She wants evidence. She wants names. She wants to know who used her love as a shield for their war of power. And that transformation may be the most dangerous thing of all for both Bill and Joey, because a Naomi who still hesitates can be guided. But a Naomi who has lost her faith becomes a woman willing to tear her whole family apart in order to drag the truth into the light. If the final secret is ever exposed, no relationship in this story will keep its old shape. Bill may lose his power not because he is arrested, but because Naomi will never look at him the same way again. Joey may survive physically, but he will be stripped of every manipulative advantage if Naomi proves he was standing in the shadows from the very beginning. Jacob, even if he survives, will carry wounds that cannot easily heal, Because an undercover mission does not only destroy safety, it also rots the foundation of trust in a marriage. And the plasma ring, if it truly is only the shell for something greater, may ignite an even more vicious war between factions that once pretended neutrality. Family will no longer be a refuge. It will become the first battleground where every old embrace turns into evidence, every shared meal into false memory, every promise of protection into a blade driven through loyalty. What makes this story so suffocatingly compelling is that no one can walk away whole. Because sometimes the truth does not save people. It only exposes that they have lived too long inside a structure of lies, until the moment the curtain falls and the first thing to collapse is not the empire or the criminal network, but the last fragile thread of trust that kept them standing beside each other. And that is Naomi's most terrifying future. Not whether Bill is the kingpin or Joey is the operator, but the possibility that she will uncover the truth and realize that from the beginning, no side ever truly belonged to her. The men she loves kept her outside the circle through silence. The father she trusted kept the family standing through shadows too dark to name. The man she always feared may be the one who understands every road leading to the abyss. In that maze, Naomi is not only investigating the plasma ring. She is investigating the entire foundation of her own life. And if one day she is forced to choose between Jacob and Bill, between present love and the blood that raised her, between protecting what remains of her family and burning it down in exchange for the truth, that choice will not create a winner. It will only create a new Naomi, more dangerous, more wounded, and no longer able to believe that family love is always powerful enough to save human beings from the darkness they helped create. In a story full of conspiracy, betrayal, and power struggles like this, the biggest question was never simply who stands behind the plasma ring. The biggest question is whether, once the truth is revealed, any of them will still deserve forgiveness at all.